That is a great song. Harvey's written some great songs. So now that I'm retired, it's surreal. And part of the deal is I didn't know what to expect. I mean, what is it? I mean, what is retirement? What is it really like? What I don't know. Hadn't done that before. And I think kind of the pace so far, I'm still waking up 5:30, you know, looking at Teresa like, how come you ain't up? She retired a couple years ago. She's figured out the pace. I don't like staying up late. She goes, well, how come you're getting up? So, well, I don't want to give my day away. So I get up. I make coffee. I don't want to turn on any power tools because I won't let my neighbor sleep till 8. Start doing projects and fixing stuff and reading. And it's the pace. I don't really have to, which is something I'm kind of getting used to. It's because it's totally different. And we're kind of looking at something different today. One of the articles I read, because usually I don't click on things, a lot of them, but this one, it had sober curious. So, well, that's interesting. So I clicked on it. It's a young lady, and she is trying to discover what it's like to go to a party and not drink alcohol. Because apparently in her culture, peer group, college, work groups, whatever, you go to a party, everybody drinks. She has never had any other practice. Grew up that way, kind of that way. And I'm going, really? I wouldn't have asked the question because I didn't grow up drinking, and so I just don't. And I thought, yeah, that would be kind of a new experience. It's something you haven't experienced before. And I'm like, well, I can tell you some of what it's like. You remember what happened. It's interesting. You don't feel bad later. You can choose your calories. You're going to wind up enjoying it. Not all of it. Sometimes you figure out that when your friends and stuff start drinking a lot, they get loud and obnoxious, and you just want to go. So you kind of have to just check it. It's different. So, and it's in a lot of things. We were at a restaurant, and my little 3-year-old grandson, he was almost 3 at the time, so eating burgers, and he likes to try the other people's drinks, the grown-up drinks, right? So he tries Teresa's unsweet tea. He was not impressed. So he wants to try mine. And Graham, Teresa goes, Landon, you ain't going to like it. Because she thinks I have unsweet tea. So he tries my drink, and he's like, and he gets up and moves around and sits by Granddad. Moves all his food, and he drinks my drink. And Teresa's going, he tried mine. He doesn't like unsweet tea. That's because this is sugared root beer. And there's something good about sugared root beer. I don't have it very often, but we're at a burger joint, I'm drinking a sugared root beer. Life can be like that. Until you've tried it, you don't know how sweet it is. Until you've tried something different than what you've known, you don't know if you really like it. Now, some of these you can figure out from others, but it's not hard to figure out sugared root beer is probably pretty good, right? Choose your calories, and I did. So as we go through life, Christianity is kind of like that. God's kind of like that. Until you look at it and you try it, you don't really know. And so if you haven't tried getting to know God through Christ, all I'm asking today is just open up the possibility that you might be something you'd enjoy experiencing. That's just part of what I'm asking. And if you want to dig in someplace where it gets complex, Daniel chapter 7 is a pretty good spot for that because it deals with end times. It deals with what's going to happen, okay? Pastor Eric introduced us to Daniel, and Daniel is, here the Hebrew people have been conquered by the Babylonians at this point. Well, first it was the Assyrians, and they were just evil. They will literally put your head on a stick. They just conquered, and you didn't go against them because they were cruel, and you better be ready. And then the Babylonians, and they would incorporate people. They would move you from your area, take the best of your people and move them and incorporate them, indoctrinate them into the Babylonian culture, and hopefully get you on our team kind of a thing, and easier to control your area. The Persians are coming, and then Alexander the Great, and Greece takes over. And then eventually the Romans, which Christians are most familiar with because that's the context of the New Testament. So that's what's coming. Right now we're in the Babylonians, and Daniel is one of these young men who's taken into captivity, and he's going to be trained in the court. And the point of the book is maintaining your faith in God as part of God's people, the Hebrew people, while in captivity, while under oppression. Will you maintain your faith. And he kept trusting God and living by faith. And last week, even facing death. So he's been promoted. He's doing well. There's a lot of jealousy. He gets set up. He gets, either, give in or get thrown into the pit of lions. And he said, okay, I'll die. Okay, that was last week. And those are fun to look at and stand the challenge. And many of our challenges happen when it's not so public. It's those quiet times when you choose to tell the truth, when you choose to keep your integrity, when you choose to say, yeah, I never thought of that, boss. When you choose to say, yeah, that's not my way. I'm not going to do that. Or I'm not signing here. I'm not going to file it that way because it's not quite true. Integrity. Who am I? What am I about? And it was that kind of a test. Now today, chapter 7 is actually before chapter 5. Remember Eric talked about that a couple weeks ago, that the writers, when he put together Daniel is the points are more important than the order. And that's real common in the ancient Near Eastern writings. It doesn't have to be chronological order. And most of the time we will do chronological order. A lot of our reports as a police officer, just tell it as it happened. But sometimes that gets so confusing when you talk to multiple people. Sometimes you'll jump around and deal with, here's what he said to the end, and then here's what he said, and here's what she said. And sometimes it's just, you follow it better. Well, there's a big point being made, and so actually this chapter is before where we've been. And there's two major points, and I think you can turn down to chapter 7. Here's the big points in Daniel. God is in control and will complete his purposes. Period. Gonna happen. It may seem out of control to us down here. It may seem like, why, God? Why? Why do the wicked flourish and your people are under oppression? And to dig into that more, dig into the Psalms and David. Dig into Ecclesiastes. Dig into Job, where there's that investigation of why. This is, yes, you may not feel like it when you're oppressed. God's going to deal with this. And I will choose to be faithful, patient, and active. Our faith is an active, strong faith. I got to hang in there. I got to be patient till God does what God does. But I'm going to be active in my faith, trusting God, sharing it with others. I'm not passive. I'm not hiding out so you won't notice me. I am, for the Hebrew people, a Hebrew, one of God's people. When we're under oppression, I am a Christ follower. I follow Jesus Christ, okay? It's who I am. You may like it, dislike it, get on to me, fire me, whatever. That's who I am, all right? And that's the major points. Our next slide. So the vision that Daniel will have, it's going to emphasize that judgment is assured. The bad people will be judged. And good people will be judged too. I mean, hey. And God's kingdom will triumph. This is going to happen. That's what we're going to see. God's kingdom's coming through. So the oppression we're under is limited by God's will. It may not feel like it, seem like it, might die in the process. God's handling it, and the kingdom's on the way someday. Quick outline, or just a quick overview of Daniel. So Daniel chapter 1 is the intro setting. Why is Daniel here? What's going on? And then 2 through 7, the destinies of all nations, okay? And it's kind of a historical narrative, 1 through 6. That's kind of where we're going. And then in 7 through 12, it gets very, very animated. It gets wild and crazy. It's apocalyptic. It's visions. The destinies of the nations, the destinies of Israel. It's vivid colors, bold brushstrokes, feelings in writing, and animated, and everything's extreme and extra, and it's the feelings are as important as the intricate details. Okay, so that's what's going on. So as we get into Daniel chapter 7, we'll just start looking through it here. So I use the New International Version. Still think it's one of the most readable we have today to get into God's Word. So first 3 verses. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream. And this just isn't a dream. This is a vision. Visions passed through his mind as he was lying in bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven, churning up the great seas. So this would be heaven is churning up the great sea. All nations, all the world, okay? 4 great beasts, each different from each other, came up out of the sea. I'm going to pause just for a minute. So here's where it's coming, okay? And it's all this, it's wild, it's crazy. And he knows it's not just any dream. And chapter 7 is a turning point in this book. The emphasis is on God's justice, the kingdom's coming, God's will. And you do more than just survive. You can actually have victory while you're being persecuted, while you're going through tough times. There's deliverance someday. It's coming. All right? So that's that act of faith. So it's a vision from God. So it's more than just a dream. It's God speaking to the Hebrew people in their situation. Here's the trouble when you start getting into visions and apocalyptic and end times. People love to jump to the end, like the end from today. There is no way you're going to properly interpret and understand if you don't deal with 2,500 years ago when this vision was given. What was the meaning when Daniel was given the vision? What was the meaning for their day before you go leap and trying to figure out what's our tomorrow? And in one of my rare moments of wisdom, if you leave and get hit by a bus, you're in your end time. What's going to happen in the end time? Well, if you die, you're there. So, why don't we deal with who are you today? Pragmatism. Yeah, people come to me for counseling, start talking about their history. I say, hey, that's great. You need to talk to somebody. If you want to deal with what you want to do today and tomorrow, I'm your guy. Okay? Because I don't know about some of that other stuff. But how are we going to deal with what we got today? I love you. I'll walk alongside you. What are you going to do about today? What's happening right now, okay? There are 4 prophets in the 6th century, which is when this is happening. Ezekiel, Haggai, Zechariah, actually a touch of Jeremiah, and then Daniel. Though Daniel is in the writings, as the Hebrews would see it. So what happens here? Well, and you need to look at all those to really start interpreting. But here's his vision. And there are 4 great beasts. You could actually translate that monsters, big, awesome, okay? Next slide. So let's look at the beasts. Beast number 1 was a lion, had wings of an eagle. I watched it, his wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground. It stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. So what is this? Look, folks, when you look through all 4 of them, and you look at history and what happened, and we want to know what did it mean in that time. So 2,500 years from now, whoever's around in whatever form, they find a newspaper. And let's see that there are 2 parties. There's just a cartoon. That's all that's left. It's got an elephant fussing with a donkey. They've lost all the notes. They don't know what it means. What's that about? Well, it's simple for us, right? 2 parties, Republican, Democrat, right? How are they going to know? Well, it's kind of like that for us sometimes. We don't know some of the details because it's 2,500 years ago. But as you look, it's pretty simple to figure this one out. Scholars are in agreement on this. So the original context is we're talking about, this is Babylon. The new Babylon, all right? This is Daniel's Babylon. The lion is the Babylon, and you can try to figure out some details. Is this Nebuchadnezzar? Some of those things. They're a little more iffy. But here's Babylon. So first, Babylon is ruling over you. What's the second? Now we got a bear. This is going to be Persia. They're coming. Which looked like a bear, this beast. It was raised up on one of its sides and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up, eat your fill of flesh. Kind of best guess is Persia eats Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt. Probably those ribs. That's a pretty good theory. So here's Persia. Persia's coming. Another big beast. 3rd beast. A leopard. I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. On his back had 4 wings, like the wings of a bird. Had 4 heads. It was given authority to rule. This, Alexander the Great, swept through and conquered fast. He set up 4 districts, 4 areas, okay? Probably where all this fits, okay? And if you look at the big brush of things in history, this is simple. If you look at your ancient Near Eastern history, this fits real simple. It's just descriptions of these areas, okay? And he moved through and he swept through and they took over. And here we go. Now, the last one. After that of my visions, number 4, there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. I just call it the scary monster. Then comes the scary monster. You think the others were powerful. Wait till you see the scary monster. All right? It was terrifying, frightening, very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed into an iron age. crushed and devoured its victims, it trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from the former beast. It had 10 horns. Not sure so much on the 10 horns. Some theories have been thrown out there. But the biggie is Rome. Rome took over all the known world. Rome was the biggest thing we'd ever seen to that point, okay? It was what was established and created the sense of peace under rule that Jesus was born into. So here's Rome. And it just deals with all of it, okay? But Rome was also arrogant. It was evil. It was self-serving. So now, verse 8. Starts to get a little unique now. While I was thinking about the horn, there before me was another horn, a little guy, right? Which came up among them, but it uprooted 3 of the other horns. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and had a mouth that spoke boastfully. Boasting before God is always bad. That means you're self-centered instead of God-centered. All right? So who's the little horn? This is where people start looking future without ever dealing with what was going on to Daniel up until Rome. Best theory, I think fits so well, is Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. He was a ruler in Rome, the Roman Empire, who persecuted the Jews heavily. Really went after them, okay? And he wanted him to be the god and Rome to be in charge and the Hebrews to be gone because they didn't put Rome first. And he was heavy in his persecution. The Hebrews gave him the nickname the Wicked. The Greeks gave him a nickname to Epiphanes. They called it Epiphanes. Epiphanes means the mad guy. He's the crazy dude. All right, so they did a word play on his title. And so that's probably the best. He's very much anti-God. So now you're going to start getting into Antichrist and who's the Antichrist. But again, I'm going to stay in this context for now. And here's the trouble with trying to figure out who's the Antichrist. All right? But let me just give you a hint. If you're anti what God's up to, you're kind of anti-God, right? Antichrist. We'll give the implications of that a little bit later. So Antichrist. It depends on when you live. The Antichrist among Christian writers and teachers have been the Turks, Islam, the church, Pope, Nazis, communism, capitalism, European community, USA, on and on and on. All have been identified over the centuries as the Antichrist. So if you tell me you know who the Antichrist and when Christ is coming, I know you don't. It's not complicated, and I don't deal with it a lot, okay? God's coming back. And honestly, I don't think I want to be around then. First off, I'm going to get older and older and older, and I want to go to heaven someday because it'll be a lot better than how I'm doing right now. The other thing is, I don't want to go through what looks like it's going to come. They're going to get bad. You know, Christians used to think it was going to get better and better and better. Really, that was the major view of Christianity for the end times until World War I. They'd never seen an evil like World War I and pain and suffering. And that just went, we didn't think it could ever be this bad. And we're still going, and then what's next? World War II. So that whole theory just kind of went away. And so predominantly now we think it's just bad. So, but what about my other deal? If you're anti-God, anti-Christ, if you're evil defined, I would look out for these types. That's who's against God at any point in time. But we continue. So here we go. So we've got Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. They're coming. 9 through 10. So then I looked, and thrones were set in place. And the Ancient of Days took his seat. This is God. That's the Ancient of Days. His clothing was white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire. Its wheels were ablaze, a river of fire flowing. Okay, you get the picture here? This is not detailed writing your history of the area. This isn't a description of how big was the throne. This is a broad brush painting, splashing paint everywhere, throwing out the feelings. It's burning. It's fire. It's crazy. Look at the power going on. Everything's ablaze. There's a river of fire. Thousands and thousands. How many is that? Don't multiply it. It means so many you can't count it. Numbers are symbolic in apocryphal literature, okay? 10,000 times 10,000 stood there. The court was seated. The books were open, okay? This is drama. This is big. So we're looking into heaven. And what happens 11 and 12? Well, first off, we'll go to the next slide. I think, yeah. Then I continue to watch. How could you take your eyes off this even in your vision, right? Man, you're just mesmerized. Because of the boastful words of the horn, oh yeah, little man, you don't talk smack to me, right? The beast was slain. The body destroyed, throw it in the blazing fire. Here you go. God's going to deal with the worst of the worst, folks. The other beasts have been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. Honestly, Persia's still around. Babylon had some bits and pieces. Greeks, they were still pretty active in the day of the Roman Empire. They weren't the authority, but they're around for a period of time, right? I'm still in Daniel's context. I haven't even gone anywhere yet, okay? And that's another even more study because there's so much value in the point for today. Next slide. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like the Son of Man. What was Jesus' favorite title for himself? Son of Man. Coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached, so this is Messiah. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and people of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. His kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. God's holy people, God's kingdom will someday never pass away. All right? It's coming. The Son of Man, the kingdom of God. Let's pause for a minute and talk about apocalyptic style. When you study history, look at it like history. If you study poetry, think of it like poetry, okay? When you study apocalyptic, think of it as a big, massive, gigantic, I don't know what to say, animated film, comic book, painting, Picasso. I don't know what to tell you. It's bright, it's vivid. The Greek word apocalypsis, it means unveiled, uncovered. It's the first book in the book of Revelation. That's the first word. That's why we call it Revelation, unveiling. The weird thing, it's just so odd, is so many people interpret this as being hidden instead of revealed, or difficult to understand. I really think that a lot of the folks that tell you they know, because you can't see it, because you don't know the key, the code, here it is, I'm going to lay it out for you. They got the secret. I think it's closely related to buy my book, which is closely related to invite me to speak, and I'll happen to have my book. Okay? Because you can't figure it out, I will. It's about being unveiled. You read Revelation, go with the feeling. Go with what it's saying. A dragon wipes out a third of the stars. What is that? Well, that means power. That's what that means. Universal power. Go with what you see and how you're feeling it, because that's the point. It's the big picture stuff. Okay? It's what's going on. Apocalyptic. Take it at face value. Take the bold colors. Take the big points. Take the feelings. Take the symbolism, numbers included. It looks ahead towards that end, doesn't it? There's a quote by a fellow, I think, almost, I don't know. What's my next slide up there? All right, we'll just leave it on that for a minute. So it's about history before and during God's final victory. It's about God winning over evil. The Hebrew people are oppressed under evil right now. But he's saying more times will come and God's got this. It's good versus evil. Good always wins. God will win in the end. It's visions and the message, and Messiah's involved, and terrible woes are coming. Like I said, I don't know if you want to be around before the end. The insistence that the righteous and faithful to God will be the ones who win. There's an urgency. Now, why does this matter? Well, folks, stay faithful. Have courage. God is active and involved in your life, in all life and in your life. Even in our toughest times, God's involved. Look for it. Depend on him. So if you're checking it out, my question is, what if it's true? What if God does exist? What if he is involved? What if he cares? Check it out. So, 15. I, Daniel, I'm troubled in my spirit, and the visions that pass through my mind, they disturb me. So I went to when I'm standing there and asked him the meaning of all this, like the angel messenger person there, right? So he told me and gave me the interpretations of these things. Isn't that nice? When the vision, that's wild and crazy, tells you what it is. Here we go. The four great beasts are four kings that will rise from the earth. But the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom, possess it forever. That's right. God's people will wind up winning in the end, okay? Here's these 4 kings. And it's pretty easy if you study your ancient Near Eastern history. Next slide. Then I wanted to know the meaning. Well, tell me about the monster, the 4th beast. It was different. It was most terrifying. Iron teeth, bronze claws, crushed and devoured victims, trampled underfoot. I wanted to know about the 10 horns and the other horn. And I'm kind of jumping through here so we can get done at some reasonable time. And I watched the horn was waging war against the holy people, defeating them. Remember the persecution? And the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of God's people, the holy people. All right? And the time came when they possessed the kingdom. Hang in there. The times are coming, 19 through 22. Next slide. And am I there yet? Nope. We'll click to the next slide if it's clicking. Sometimes our computer has a mind of its own. There we go. He said, well, the 4th beast is the 4th kingdom. Right? Pretty easy. It's Rome. It'll be different. It'll devour the whole earth. They crushed and they held everything. Built the roads so the word could get out about Jesus Christ eventually. So the Christians, when they're persecuted, could go everywhere and share the good news. The 10 horns are 10 kings coming from the kingdom. Then another king will arise. He's different. He'll subdue 3. He'll speak against the Most High. He'll oppress God's holy people. And the holy people will be delivered in his hand for a time, times, and a half time. There's a period of time when it's rough, but God will come through. Next slide. Here we go. But the court will sit. His power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Then the sovereign power and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. Eventually, God's kingdom will rule, and that's where we're headed. Rome was more powerful than anybody at the time, but God's kingdom is far more powerful. Keep going. This is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled in my thoughts, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself. Okay, if you think a prophet is haughty and say, ha ha, no. Prophets weep. Prophets hurt for their people because we got to go through this. I hurt for my folks. And he turned kind of pale, lost all the blood in his face because it was so frightening what he sees is coming. Tough times. So let me summarize some things we've just learned from chapter 7. I've gone through quickly. There's a lot there. So here we go. Warnings. Any nation, leader, person, no matter how powerful, is accountable to God and they will be judged. It doesn't look like it today. I'm wondering, there's some frightening things going on in the world again today. They will be judged. If we see anything from Daniel, God's got this. It happened with the Hebrew people. It's happened in history. God's got it. God will have the last word. We don't get the last word. Now, have you noticed some texts never end? Especially group texts. They never end. No one, got it. Sure, I got it. Well, I got your got it. Did you get my got it? I'm not sure if you got my got it. Okay, you got it or you didn't get it? No, let me send it again. They just don't end. So, well, I'm praying for that. Oh, here we go. Got to go through this again. Thank you. Once somebody says they're praying, I'm figuring the others are praying, okay? It just nonstop. And thank you, women, for not putting me on your prayer chain. Teresa fills me in. She lets me know who to pray for. Because but she loves the interaction. All right? She absolutely loves it. But let me tell you who's going to have the last word. In the great text of life, God will have the last word. We should always work. I wrote this positive. I wrote it negative at first. We should always work to do God's will for nations, to free the oppressed, stop evil, create peace, individually and as a nation. I actually wrote it that if you do evil, you're anti-God, anti-Christ. You are an antichrist. Whether it's the or a or whatever. You're antichrist. If you're not living serving God's will, who are you? You're anti-God. There's a lesson there. Don't think only the worst bad guy is the one who gets judged and slain and thrown in the fire. We're all accountable to God. Every one of us. every day, every situation. Are we living and working doing God's will, God's way, the way God would like us to deal with it right now? We all have that. And in a country that's a democracy, we have a responsibility to responsibly help lead our country. I can't do a whole lot. I can vote. I can send my opinions in, and they get added up. So we need to contribute. Now let's look at the next slide, the blessings. We are called to an active, courageous, expectant, faithful, direct self-application to living our lives confident in God. A guy named John Goldingay wrote this. He wrote a commentary, a very good one, on Daniel. We don't have any faith. We have an active faith that's courageous, that expects things to happen and God to work, that's faithful no matter what. That's direct self-application to living. We live our faith every moment, every day, confident in God. That's the kind of faith God is calling us to. That's the kind of faith Daniel's vision was encouraging his people to hold on to. All right, let's hit those blessings. God is in control and involved in life, in your life. And God will complete his purpose. Don't worry, God's going to deal with it. He's going to handle it. So have faith. Hold on tight. If Job says anything, it says, look, I wish I could fit all into your brain and explain it all to you, but it just wouldn't hold. So why don't you just hold on to me, and I'll do my part, you do yours. Ecclesiastes, from down here, I don't get it. But I get this sense of, from your perspective beyond the sun, looking down on this world, it all fits. Hey, there's free will. Bad guys can do bad. Good guys can do good. It's all part of the mix. How it all fits together, I don't know. I don't know. But I got to hold on. And sometimes the best you can do is just holler at God. David, why? Do it. He can handle it. He's got big shoulders. Do it. But then listen to his answer and hold on. Hold on. I will be faithful, patient, active. I can do something today. I can affect a life today. I can touch someone today and tomorrow. I may not fix world history tomorrow, but I can bless somebody for God, right? So live it every day. God's greatest victory? It was a surprise. Christ died. Boy, the Christians were pretty confused, the followers. They weren't really Christians yet, right? Christ's followers, he got killed. And they don't know what to think. 3 days later, he's resurrected and go, oh, we win through death. A lot of what happens from God's perspective is a surprise. It's not what we're thinking. It's not how we would have done it. And wow, is it so much better. We have victory over sin, over guilt, over all, through faith in Christ's death and resurrection. What an answer. So when God says he's got it, he told it to his Hebrew people back 2,500 years ago. He had it. And the kingdom will come, and he'll deal with it. Now, there's more study, sure. That's a lot right here in Daniel 7, isn't it? We'll talk more next week. God, thank you so much for loving us, for caring for us, for giving us your word, your encouragement, that even under oppression and difficult times, you have it. You're active and involved in our lives and the lives of the world. And may we trust you. And may we serve you actively every day.